Hi, today on A Slice of Heaven we are going to be making a little Italian appetizer. This is my husband Gary who's going to assist me today, and we just spent a wonderful pilgrimage in Italy August 19th to the 30th, so we thought it'd be appropriate to have our Italian aprons on and make an Italian appetizer. So it's going to be bruschetta, which Americans unfortunately call it bruschetta, but it's actually called bruschetta. And while I'm chopping the tomatoes and basil and things, my lovely, wonderful assistant is going to be preparing the bread. So he's going to slice up 8 or 10 slices of French bread. He's going to coat them with a little bit of olive oil and put the olive oil side down on the baking sheet. And while I'm doing all the chopping, he's going to have the bread prepared in the oven, and when I'm done, then we'll be ready to top it with the bruschetta. So as he's doing that, I'm going to chop 3 tomatoes. Got my basket over here. And basil. So we're going to add 3 tomatoes to 6 to 8 pieces of basil. And we'll then add 4 to 6 cloves, peeled and minced. We're going to have olive oil, balsamic vinegar, white wine vinegar, a dash of pepper, and a dash of red pepper flakes. As we're chopping here, I'll tell you a little bit about our trip. It was a pilgrimage, as I said, and we visited Rome. We stayed in Rome for 6 days, 5 nights, and visiting all of the wonderful places from St. Peter's Basilica to the Trevi Fountain, some of the Vatican museums, which is immense, so you could probably spend a whole week visiting the museums.
Including the Sistine Chapel.
Yes, including the Sistine Chapel, which was quite amazing with Michelangelo's frescoes, and we saw some of his sculptures that he did, the Pieta, which was amazing. It's actually behind a glass now because of some vandalism that happened.
Years ago.
Yep, years ago. Just, you see all of these pictures of frescoes and, the sculptures in books, but it isn't quite like being there. We had a wonderful tour guide, Monica, who is from Rome, and Juan Landa actually organized the pilgrimage. And then Father Martin from our parish, St. John the Baptist, was came along as our spiritual guide and director. He had studied in Rome, lived at North American College for 5 years when he was in a seminary, so he has had vast experiences, with getting people around, and we had some extra special tours by Father Martin. One morning we went, it was on a Sunday, one of the highlights was also seeing Pope Francis, and he did his Angelus at noon, and before that we had a few hours before we had to leave, and Father Martin took us up to North American College. And one thing that we learned was, I used to think North American, Gary is smashing the cloves right now. We kind of all thought North American College was actually the seminary where our seminarians would study, but it's actually the dorm where they live, and there's several seminaries that they can actually decide where they want to study when they're in the seminary. One of the best things, I think, which was really special for us, was also having our youngest son, Michael, went along with us, and it was just really amazing to see so many wonderful sculptures and places. The food was wonderful. Some of the different food that we had were a variety of pastas at different restaurants, but the all-time favorite for most of us was the gelato, which is their ice cream. And it's made with...
I'm not sure, I just eat it.
Yeah, it doesn't have the cream. We should probably research that. But anyway, it was awesome. And another young man, Michael, who was also along, loves chocolate milk and really missed not having milk because that's not a real big thing that the Italians drink. It's, you know, more of the coffee and espresso. So
And wine.
And wine, of course. So he was really missing the chocolate milk. So he had gelato every chance that, you know, he could find a place. And they're kind of like our Starbucks coffee shops in the big city. They're everywhere. And it was pretty awesome. Because I also do like coffee, my favorite kinds of gelato were, well, tiramisu and
Macchiato.
Macchiato. I had caramel macchiato, and it was a combination. And then also the latte was really awesome. We also spent 4 days in Assisi, where St. Francis lived and studied and talked to the animals and did a lot of wonderful charitable work with the poor people. Some of the other towns were Montepello and Lanciano, Loreto,
And Siena.
and Siena.
And Orvieto.
So it was 12 days filled
And
with
Anzio,
just...
too. We went to see the U.S. military cemetery that is similar to the Normandy Cemetery, and it is owned and kept up by the U.S. federal government, and it's where over 7,000 American soldiers who died in World War II during the Italian campaign were sacrificed their lives and gave their lives and are buried there. So that was pretty impressive to see that as well.
Another small place was Nettuno, which we also visited, and we had a chance to see the Adriatic Sea. And it was kind of fun because I love to collect and grab seashells whenever we are, you know, at an ocean or whatever. So we're out one morning early walking before breakfast, and we were going to collect some seashells and walk on the sand. Well, what was interesting was the sand was actually just made up of pebbles. It was just an all, you know, rocky, pebbly beach. So that was, you know, kind of interesting. Other highlights, we also walked up the holy stairs that Jesus actually walked when he was on his way to Pontius Pilate to be crucified. And of course the Colosseum, the Forum, the Pantheon. So it was just an awesome trip. Oops. Oops, I think that one's already smashed. So when we got home, after being on, you know, such a wonderful pilgrimage, it was really hard, you know, kind of getting back into normal life, because once you've experienced something like that, it's like none other. And but we know someday we hope to go back to Italy. When you're at the Trevi Fountain, I'm gonna smash this. When you're at the Trevi Fountain, it's kind of a superstitious thing, but you are supposed to throw a coin over your shoulder, and then that's supposed to be good luck, and that you're going to come back and visit. So someday, God willing, we might get back there.
Yeah.
So Gary cut some of them by hand, chopped. Otherwise, you can
Not to make a lot of noise, even though I did.
you can also use a Pampered Chef food grinder. And that also does the trick. Okay, so after we have this all set to go,
Stir that around a little.
okay, then we are going to add 3 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar, and 3 tablespoons of red wine vinegar was also in here, and 2/3 of a cup of olive oil. And then we're just going to grind some pepper to taste. And put in some red pepper flakes to taste too. If you feel like it's spicy, then you might want a little bit more. Get them all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
As we were on our way over to Rome, we flew Swiss Air. So we there was a coach bus that took us to Chicago, and then we flew on Swiss Air from Chicago to Zurich, and then from Zurich then to Rome. And it was the most amazing flight. In the United States, I think we unfortunately have a lot of unhappy people, flight attendants that are working, and these flight attendants were the happiest flight attendants I have ever seen. And it was really a pleasure because they were really interested in just doing the best job that they could do, and serving you and constantly feeding you and giving you beverages, and it was just a really enjoyable time. It was a long way getting there. It's a 7-hour difference, and
a 9.5-hour trip.
9.5-hour trip. And as soon as that bread is ready, we're going to top it. Now, as I said, when Gary cut it and put it in the oven, he put it the oil side down, and then when he brings it back out, we're going to put the oil side up, and then put our bruschetta on there and some Parmesan cheese, and we will be all set to have some toast, bruschetta, and some wine, just like when we were in Italy.
Yeah, one of the interesting things, and we had heard this before we had even traveled to Italy, and that was their custom of eating their dinner later in the evening than we do in the United States. It's not unusual for them to have their dinner around 7:30 or 8:30 in the evening, and the other thing too we had heard was, and it's true, they'll have their main course, what we consider the main course, they have that first, and then they finish their meal with a fresh lettuce salad. And so that was quite interesting, with usually balsamic vinegar, something real light, and they don't smother, if you will, their green salads with tomatoes and mushrooms and all the other assorted items that we put on our salads here. They just have plain fresh greens with a little balsamic vinegar on there. Is pretty typical. So that was kind of interesting and refreshing too.
And what we also found interesting was that whenever you sat down for a meal, they always had baskets of bread on your table, but without butter and without a plate. So you'd be sitting there and you take your piece of bread, and it was much meatier, I guess, if you would say, because our bread sometimes tends to be a little lighter and spongy, and their bread is heavier and very good. But you would sit there and have a piece of bread or two before your main meal, pasta or whatever would come. And so it was really interesting.
Our first dinner there was kind of awkward because we're all looking around at each other and wondering, well, where are the bread plates? We looked at each other, and then we looked around at some other tables of the natives that live there and have their meals there quite frequently, and it's like you just break the bread, and the crumbs and the crusts and the crumbs of the bread are just all over the tablecloth, and that's how they eat it. And then you wait till the dinner plate comes, and then you can brush your crumbs off onto the dinner plate. So.
Okay, we have our bread out of the oven, and now I'm going to tip it with the oil side up. And put it on the plate like this. Okay, put that over. Okay, we'll mix that basil in a little bit more, and then you can just put a generous serving on your bread. Other recipes too that actually called for you to put this in a kitchen, like your KitchenAid food processor, or a food processor, but I think it would just get a little bit too mushy because you want to have the tomatoes so that you know, they're a little bit bigger.
Got some cheese on there.
Yeah. And then the cheese just makes it look nice, and then you've got your dairy in there, so we've got most of the food
All
group
the
in
food
here.
groups. Not all, but close to all.
The only thing we're missing is the dessert. So we got the grains and the vegetables and the dairy.
Mm-hmm. Fruit and vegetables.
Fruit and vegetables.
Depends what you want to call a tomato. There's always been the
And I do
discussion
have
of fruit and vegetable. It's either one.
I have a book here, and it's Italian Cooking for Dummies. And there are some wonderful recipes in here that are fairly easy to use, and this would be one of them. So from a slice of heaven, this has been an enjoyable experience sharing a little bit of our trip with you, and we hope that you have enjoyed our show today, and happy cooking. One of our other highlights was going to a winery when we were in Italy, and that was in
Assisi.
in Assisi, and it was Scio. Is what it's called. So we had a chance to try some of the Italian wine, which was wonderful. And for those of us who get headaches, like migraines, like I do, the Italian wine is really good because they don't have sulfites in it,
Correct.
which prevent you from, you know, having migraines. So that was a big benefit for me. So anyway,
Right.
so here's to Italy.
Salute.